Well, greetings friends and brethren around the world. This is Michael Vernish coming to you once more. Jesus made a statement in Matthew chapter 7 verses 16 and 20. And he repeated that verse in verse 20. And he said, "You shall know them by their fruits." This is a very famous statement of Jesus Christ and is used by some religious leaders to convince their membership to part with hundreds of thousands of dollars to help pay for the growth of their church or organization, to pay for their television programs, to pay for their literature, to pay for buildings that they are putting up, and for campuses they are developing. So they say, when you look at all this growth, it is exactly what Jesus said. You shall know them by their fruits. These leaders say, look, we are fulfilling what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 7 verses 16 and verse 20. Our organization is bearing fruits. Our organization is fulfilling that. One religious leader said in a letter to his church, only the one church that Jesus built passes the test when fruits alone are made the standard. Is Jesus Christ talking about a standard here that churches must have? Is that what he's talking about? Are those fruits the standard of a church or an organization? What exactly is Jesus Christ talking about? We will get to that. But let us first read what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 7 and verse 16. He states, and remember, dear friends, that he's talking to his disciples. His disciples. You shall know them by their fruits. Verse 16, do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles? Even so, every good tree brings forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree brings forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Every tree that brings not forth good fruit is cut down and cast into the fire. Then Jesus repeats in verse 20, wherefore, by their fruits you shall know them. Know them. Know the church? Know the organization? Is it their fruits that Jesus Christ is talking about? We will get to this, dear friends. We will come to that understanding very soon. But first, let's go to John chapter 15, where Jesus Christ is describing a vine and our connection as Christians to that vine. Jesus says in verse 1 of John 15, I am the vine, and my Father is the husbandman. Or my Father is the farmer. He's the one out there that is digging around the trees, he is fertilizing, and he is the one pruning the trees. Every branch in me that bears not fruit, he, my Father, takes away. And every branch that bears fruit, he purges it or prunes it. And of course every landscaper or every good gardener or every farmer understands that the more you prune your trees in the right manner, the more it will produce fruit. The more fruit you will get from it. So Christ is saying, and my Father purges it that it may bring forth more fruit. He goes on and he says, abide in me. That is, continue in me, stay in me, dwell in me, Jesus says, and I in you. If you stay in me, I'll stay in you. And as the branch cannot bear fruit of itself except it abide in the vine, so no more can you except you abide in me. So we have to abide in Jesus Christ to bear this fruit. We have to abide in him and be purged by the Father or pruned by the Father, which is trials really, which is another video production we will do about the trials that Christians must bear, or go through. But Jesus Christ continues, I am the vine, and you, he says, are the branches. Differentiating between the vine and the branch now, because the branches are connected to the vine. And he said, you must abide in me, be connected to me, stay with me. You are the branches, he that abides in me, and I in him, the same brings forth much fruit. For without me, Jesus says, you can do nothing. Why? Why can we do nothing? Well, let's go on. He says, if a man, now he describes this branch as a man. He's talking to an individual here now. If a man abides not in me, he is cast off as a branch. He is cast off as a branch and is withered. And men gather those withered branches and cast them into the fire. Why do they wither? Well, they cut off from the vine. You know, if you cut saw off a big branch off a tree, or you snip off some branches while you're pruning some fruit trees, those little pieces that you've snipped off, or those branches that are cut off, are going to wither, because they're not enjoying the sap, the life-giving sap that's coming from the tree. They're not receiving it anymore. So they wither and die. They're not receiving the Holy Spirit. Because in Colossians 1:27 we are told that it is the Spirit, it is Christ in us. Christ living in us. I said Colossians chapter 2 verse 27. Christ in us, the hope of glory. He has to be in us through the Holy Spirit. And you can read about that in 2 Corinthians chapter 2. Read the whole chapter. And Romans chapter 7 verse 14. Read those scriptures. But Jesus Christ said we are cast into the fire if we're cut off and we wither and die. He goes on and he says, herein is my Father glorified, if you bear much fruit. So we have to bear fruit, brethren and dear friends. We have to bear fruit. So shall you be my disciples if you are bearing fruit. What was Jesus Christ talking about in Matthew chapter 7? Jesus is discussing the fruits of an individual and not of the growth of an organization or a church. He's not talking about that growth. He's talking about individual Christians' growth, or the growth of an individual, or the growth of a man. Let's go back to Matthew chapter 7 and understand the context in which the two verses that some religious imposters love to quote. Let's go back to Matthew 7. Notice in Matthew 7 verse 13, Jesus says, enter you in the straight gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and many there be which go thereat. That's what Jesus is saying. Because straight is the gate and narrow is the way which leads unto life, and few there be that find that way to life. But in verse 15 Jesus says, beware of false prophets. And the Greek there for false prophets can be rendered religious impostors. Beware of religious impostors which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. You shall know them, in verse 16. Know these ravening wolves, these religious impostors. You shall know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles? He's telling us here these religious impostors will come with sweet deceptive stories, trying to tell you, trying to hook you in to their organization, so that you can part with your money to help them build this great big image that they want to build. Don't be deceived, dear friends and dear brethren. Jesus Christ was talking about religious impostors in Matthew chapter 7 verses 15 to 21. Verse 20 states, whereby their fruits you shall know them, by the fruits of these religious impostors. Well, until next time, dear friends around the world, this is Michael Verney saying goodbye.